minutes of music, suddenly, all around the owl, activity began. Here is the main central part of the ritual.
Which would pursue us here has lost its power under these friendly trees. So shall we burn thee once again this night, flames that eat thine effigy. We shall read the sign, Midsummer sets us free. Ye shall burn me once again. Now believe, flame, which hither ye have brought from regions where I reign. Ye fools and priests, I spit upon your fire. Wow. Prince of all mortal wisdom, Owl of Bohemia, we beseech thee, grant us thy counsel. Great Owl of Bohemia, we thank thee for thy adjuration. Begone, dull care. Fire shall have its will of thee. Begone, dull care. And all the winds, they carry with thy dust. Hail, fellowship's eternal flame. Once again, Midsummer sets us free.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, when you see that black edge coming in, that was the field from the camera. There you see the funeral pyre burning with the effigy of a human, or it could be real, ladies and gentlemen. There's been a lot of strange going-ons in that area of Northern California, but this is what the establishment is into right here in America. Republican, Democrat, you name it. They're all working on the same team. Ladies and gentlemen, it's called world government, the New World Order, dehumanization. It's not a joke. It's deadly serious. Unfortunately, they've been breeding societies to think everything's a joke. I'm here to tell you truth is stranger than fiction.
Television is a massive mass hypnotist to the global mind. And what happens is it is implanting a belief in reality by the minute, and then once we take on that belief implanted, when information enters the eyes, we edit it on the basis of that belief. And so what the global population is subjected to, suffering from, is actually literally mass hypnosis. And when we talk about people who kind of start to see things and see the manipulation they couldn't see before, what do we say about them? What do they say about themselves? They say, I woke up. Exactly what they've done. When people start to go, hey, I can see it now, it's like someone has gone along, like the hypnotist, and clicked their fingers, and it's like, oh, I can see it now. Mass hypnosis. And that is the greatest hypnotist on the planet, and that's the basis of why it was created.
A 49-year-old unidentified man went berserk last
Where does
night.
she get her
Fired
view
with
of
a
the
12-gauge
world?
Shotgun. 14 people are dead, including
Who
3
will be her
children,
role
4 others
models?
suffered.
What values will she have? Whose child is she? Yours or the network's? Take back your children. Turn off the TV.
And when you start to research the subliminals in advertising and television, what staggers you is not what they do and what's there, but the scale of it. I mean, it's like our consciousness is being hit by an explosion of this stuff. Because you see, this is another interesting point. Experiments have shown that about 1.5 seconds before the conscious mind decides to take action, move its arms or whatever, speak, 1.5 seconds before it consciously decides to do that, the electrical signals have begun in the brain to do it. For me, the conscious level is the experiencer and observer of reality, but the subconscious is the creator of it, the generator of it. And this is why the Illuminati want the subconscious mind through subliminals. What does subliminal mean? It means below threshold. It's below the threshold the conscious mind picks up, but the subconscious mind picks everything up like a sponge. And therefore they are planting these thoughts into the subconscious, which then filter down into the conscious, and we think we're having our own thoughts, when actually they're implanted thoughts done at a subliminal level.
Rats were caught in the sewers a week ago. Now they're starving. When the plastic door is raised up, the rats will shoot out like bullets. It was a common punishment in Imperial China. Do it, Julia. Do it, Julia. Not me. Julia.
And of course this is being used, this subliminal manipulation in politics. I mean, of course we had that incident during the Bush-Gore farce of an election, when an anti-Gore political broadcast for Bush, they put a subliminal in of rats while they were talking, but they left it up too long, and you only had to play the tape back slowly, a little slowly, and up come rats, as some anti-Gore statement was being.
If you had to put a name to the conspiracy that's come down to us through the ages, that some call the Illuminati, some other people call it other things, but I think if you boil it down to its purest, simplest form, you would identify it essentially as Freemasonry. Now that might surprise some of you, but understand that Masonry has been around a long, long time. It may not have always been called Freemasonry, but Masons itself brag about the fact that their first Mason was Tubal-Cain. Now Tubal-Cain, if you know your Bible, was the 7th man from Adam by way of Cain, and he was the guy that invented metalworking. And he is supposedly the first Mason. Now that's pretty far back to start a conspiracy. Then of course you have the flood. After the flood, the Masons say that the first Mason was Nimrod. Now of course we all know who Nimrod was. He's the guy that helped build the Tower of Babel. That's pretty good Masonry. He was the person who basically had the idea for a one world government. He wanted to start a United Nations. He had all these great ideas, you know, one world government, all this kind of stuff, New World Order. And God had other ideas. And God came down and he cast confusion and changed the languages of the people. So they went and scattered abroad on the earth. That basically tells us what God thinks about the United Nations. This caused the conspiracy to go underground. And for centuries it existed in various forms. And if you look in the books, the literature of Masonry, you will find that Masonry says it is the direct linear descendant from the ancient mystery religions, from the ancient fertility cults. Now what does that mean? That sounds sort of exciting and mysterious and exotic. Well, the ancient fertility cults were cults that revolved around human and animal reproduction. I'm sorry to be blunt, but that's what they mean. It's Baal worship, essentially. If you study the worship of Baal in the Bible, you've got all these false gods like Molech and Baal and Chemosh and some of these others. All of them, their rites involve sexuality. And that's the same thing that Masonry is. That's why the god of Masonry is the phallus. That's why you have Masonic monuments like the Washington Monument that look like a giant phallic symbol. It's that simple. So this is the conspiracy. And it may have been called many names, like, for example, before the time of Christ, Masonry was called the Dionysian Artificers. Later on, it was called the Gnostics. The Gnostics are basically people who believe that you are saved by secret knowledge, to put it simply. Gnosticism, it comes from the Greek word gnosis, which means knowledge, like diagnosis or prognosis. And what they believed is that Christianity, as it is constituted in the Bible, is far too simple. It's a Greek heresy off of the truth of Christianity. And what it means is that you have to go through all sorts of elaborate rituals and details and deal with archons and aeons and logos and all these different things in order to receive salvation. Modern day Gnostics would be examples, for example, the Mormons, the Masons, a lot of New Agers. All these people believe they're saved by acquiring some sort of arcane, hidden wisdom. Then we've got pre-Islamic sorcery and alchemy, but that in turn birthed what is called the assassin cult. Now, some of you may have heard of this. There was a group that came out of Orthodox Islam that was called the Ishmaelians. It was like a splinter group. And these Ishmaelians were a small but powerful heresy. And one of their chief leaders was a sheikh by the name of Hassan-i-Sabah. And this guy led a group that was called the Hashishin. That's where we get our word assassin, is from the Arabic word hashishin. Now, why were they called hashishin? Because the word means eaters of hashish. How this guy worked, he is kind of the father of the modern day conspiracy. He was the father of modern day espionage. And he was the first programmer, the first mind control operator. And this is what he did. If someone wanted to join his group, he knew he needed elite warriors because he had all of Islam arrayed against him. When you died, you would go to a place called paradise, where you could do all the stuff you weren't allowed to do as a Muslim. You could eat pork, you could drink wine, and there were these beautiful angels called Uris that looked just like Playboy centerfolds, and they would minister to your every whim throughout eternity. And this is the Islamic paradise. Now, what Hassan would do with one of these recruits, because he needed someone who was just a fanatic, and what he would do is he would bring this person in and feed them a sumptuous meal. And the meal would be laced with copious amounts of hashish. In other words, he'd get the guy really stoned. I mean, we're talking seriously stoned here. And then he would take him into a secret garden in the heart of his castle, and there would be beautiful women, all the pork he could eat, all the wine he could drink, and for 3 or 4 hours the guy would just really enjoy himself. And then he would bring him back when he started coming down off the trip. And he would sit him in the chair and he would say, I have taken you to paradise. I have that power. If you serve me in jihad and die in my service, you will go straight to paradise for all eternity. What do you think the guy said? And these guys were total fanatics. I mean, he was famous for doing things like he'd have 10 of them line up on a wall, he'd snap his fingers and they'd jump in unison 1,000 feet to their deaths, grinning all the way. And those have become some of the bywords of the Illuminati that he had such a profound influence on. Okay, moving along.